Navigating the world of crop sensor cameras can be a bit overwhelming due to the sheer amount of cameras from Fuji, Canon, Sony, and Nikon. But once you filter them down to the most affordable, there's really only 3 options for a brand new APS-C camera right now. You got the Canon R100, the Sony ZV-E10, and the star of today's show, the Nikon Z30. So I tested the Z30 to see if it stands out among the crowd. I found a really cool hidden gem that I'm excited to share with you guys.
Wait, the car.
Battery's about to die and we just started.
Freaking car.
And I also found some problems, so let's get into it. This video is sponsored by Nisi. The first thing to note is this thing is incredibly compact. Like, it's so stinking tiny and lightweight. It's kind of crazy how small this thing is for what the specs say it can do.
I was just asking Zach where the camera was. Shazam. Pocketability.
But the interesting thing is Nikon is pushing this towards vloggers. There's been a lot of vlogger cameras coming out in the past few years, and I want to know, is it actually good for that? Are those kinds of people actually buying it? Or is it better at other things? And once I show you this little hidden secret feature that I discovered recently, I think you're gonna understand that this camera is more than what it's marketed for, kind of. Now what's interesting is it has the same exact sensor in it as other more expensive Nikon APS-C cameras. For instance, the Z52 that we reviewed recently on the channel, and also the Nikon ZFC, which you guys can just let me know if you want a 2025 ZFC video to see if that even makes sense nowadays. All 3 of these cameras, plus the original Z50, have the exact same sensor in it, but this is the most affordable new option. But even though it's the most affordable option from Nikon right now, it still has really good build quality. The body still has a little bit of that rugged feel that their more expensive cameras have, and the buttons and dials actually feel pretty good for such a consumer level camera. And even though it's so tiny, Nikon's found a way to still keep a pretty good grip on this thing, even though, you know, it's very compact. Like, your pinky's gonna hang off the end for sure, but it still feels good to hold in your hand.
Should we test the weather capabilities of this?
Yeah.
This is a weather test of the Nikon. And guess what? Still took a picture.
Overall, that's something I've been appreciating about Nikon for the past year, is their consistent build quality. For the sensor, it's a 20.9 megapixel APS-C sensor, like we mentioned, and it's not a new concept to see the same older sensors recycled into newer camera bodies. Sony's put the same sensor in like 47 different cameras over the past couple years, so this is nothing new. But an interesting tidbit is this Z30 has an older processor. It's the XSpeed 6 versus something like this one, the Nikon Z52, has the new XSpeed 7. So this camera can do some things, even though it has the same sensor, that the Z30 cannot do. And some of it is kind of a bummer that we'll get into. The lens mount is obviously the new Z mount, which opens up some awesome opportunities for cool lenses, like the Nikon 24 1.7 is awesome on this camera. And I've been loving my Sigma combo of the 16 1.4 and the 56 1.4 Z mounts. These 2 lenses in general could get you by with so much quality for photo and video for a pretty affordable price. And those fast lenses are important if you want to still get a kind of full frame look out of a crop sensor. I know it's a whole debate we've spent too much time on, but I love crop sensor cameras because of how compact they are. And then if you throw really nice fast lenses on them like Sigma's 1.4s, you can still get beautiful depth of field. And people would not notice that it's crop sensor unless you told them.
So I'm noticing a problem right away that I don't like about this camera, similar to the Z50 Mark II we reviewed, is that the shutter goes to a maximum of 1/4000th. So if you want to shoot with like an open f-stop in a bright sunny day like I do, you got to stop down on your aperture. Where are
Thoughts
you?
on Nikon's menu?
Painful, very painful. You can make your own custom menu, but ain't nobody got time for that.
This camera has a single card slot. It has a micro HDMI, and nobody likes a guy with a micro.
Sorry.
It does have USB-C power delivery and live stream functionality, which is a huge plus if you want to use this thing as a webcam for your Zoom calls and whatnot. There's no headphone jack, but there is a mic jack, so you could put a shotgun on top of this camera, or you could use the built-in stereo mics on top of this camera. This is what they sound like straight out of camera.
Good vlog. Look at yourself.
That's you, handsome boy.
Go Nova!
And one big ol' poop stain on this camera. Once again, another camera with no electronic viewfinder.
Why?
I don't like having the lens here, but then looking left.
Yes.
And I obviously could fold it back in,
But then you have to hold it up.
But then you have to hold it up or freaking shoot down. Viewfinder is just naturally more appealing. I just saw a really cool snowflake fall from a tree.
Here, I'll zoom in on it.
All right.
And originally I thought maybe it's to keep the cost down, but then I saw that the Canon R100 has a viewfinder. And it's cheaper than the Z30 and the ZV-E10. It's the cheapest APS-C brand new camera you can get right now, and it has a viewfinder.
I barely know her. Oh!
But the Z30 does have a tilty vlogger boy screen. Overall, the screen is not horrible, but it is not great by any means. So it's affordable, get what you pay for. Okay, let's talk about photography performance, and spoiler alert, this is where the Z30 absolutely shines, in my opinion, which is kind of hilarious because it's marketed as a vlogger camera. It shoots 11 frames per second, raw photos with Nikon's really nice looking natural images. It really doesn't take a lot of editing to get these raw photos to look good, but if you don't want to edit your photos, we're gonna talk about that hidden gem here in a second. The autofocus in photography is solid. You'll get pretty good results. Won't be perfect, but I do wish it had the autofocus automatic subject detection that the Z50 Mark II has that we talked about. Go watch that review if you're interested in that setting. It's actually kind of awesome, but maybe the reason they didn't put it in the Z30 is because of the older processor in this camera. I don't know. If you don't want to talk about JPEG photos, just skip to the next chapter of this video, but I found an interesting hidden gem, and by I found, I mean Cam Mackey found it, and I watched his video on it and then talked to him about it. But basically what Cam talked about in his video is that there's Nikon software, which is called NX Studio. By the way, this is not sponsored. I'm just talking about this because I think it's fascinating. Track with me here for a second. Basically, within NX Studio, you can see and import the photos you shot, kind of like importing photos into Lightroom. But because it's Nikon software, you can change what profile those photos were shot in. But what's really cool is you can adjust the intensity of those built-in camera picture profiles, which makes the photos look so much better. And this is what Cam talked about. Basically, you can select the creative photo modes, which I have always thought was a total joke. When you look at those filters in camera, they look hilariously bad. But in this software, you can dial the intensity way back, and then it starts to look so much better. I really like the pop profile actually, and then denim and pure as well are really good. You can then export these as a color profile, send it back to your camera, and then shoot with that either baked into a JPEG file so you don't have to edit and it looks really good out of camera, or you can just use that as a reference on your little tiny screen to have a better looking image when you're out shooting even in RAW. Obviously, when you shoot in RAW, those settings aren't going to affect the final file. In JPEG, it will, so you could always do RAW plus JPEG if you want both. I know, that might sound like a ton of work, but you can actually do this in camera as well, and it's super fast. All you do is click on your eye menu, go to your set picture control button, then you can choose any picture control in these. Let's just go with pop. Then you click down to adjust, and then shada bada bada boom, you can just change the effect level right here. You can change your sharpness, contrast, saturation, and then click OK and shoot JPEG, or just have a reference for your raw photos. So one quirk I discovered about this whole custom picture control thing is obviously they work great for photography, but the custom picture controls you make don't show up in the video custom control menus, which is super weird because you can still go to any picture mode in the video settings and customize it in that menu, exactly like how you can do it with the photo menu. I hope Nikon can fix that because it would be nice if these worked universally between photography and video. And when you're shooting video, you're gonna need some nice filters to get the best image quality you possibly can, and that's where today's sponsor, Nisi, comes in clutch. Also, we're doing a little vlog test of stabilization and autofocus and whatnot while I read this sponsored ad, so stick around. So this is the JetMag Pro Cinema Kit from Nisi. Why is it called that? Because it's fast, it's magnetic, and it's professional, duh. All right, IBIS test now while I walk. Basically, these are magnetic filters that make getting super high quality footage extremely fast. And when I switched to magnetic filters a couple of years ago, I will never go back because it's just so fast and convenient compared to traditional screw-on filters. Screw-on filters, screw off. This kit comes with 4 strengths of ND, a polarizer, black mist 1/8, which I have on right now, along with a ND filter. How does it look? 4 sizing rings to fit your lenses, high quality metal caps, which are also magnetic, and this nice case. One question you might be asking though is, will it fall off? It doesn't fall off.
That's amazing.
No,
I mean, they have this little locking patent. So I magnetically attach it and then I rotate it and now I can't pull it off the lens. Please click the link in the description or the pinned comment right below the like button. Appreciate you guys so much for watching this and for listening. And Nisi, thank you for the sponsor. Now, let's get into the Z30's video stuff.
So the Z30 is marketed as a camera for vloggers, but the video side is actually more disappointing to me than the photography side. For filming options, you can do 4K up to 30 frames per second or 1080p up to 120 frames per second. I was pretty excited about the 120, but it actually looks pretty bad. I'm just gonna be honest, it's very mushy. Also, the dynamic range in this camera suffers because it does not have a log profile. I know not everybody out there wants to shoot in log, but it's nice even in affordable cameras like this to have the option to learn how to shoot in log and upgrade your skills, maximize the image quality you can get out of a small camera like this. Even Sony's very affordable consumer crop sensor cameras allow you to shoot in S-Log2, S-Log3. You don't have to, but it's nice to have that option if you want to practice or maximize what you get out of your affordable camera. And this lack of log is a bummer for me personally because the Z50 Mark II shoots in log, but the image stabilization in the Z50 Mark II is somehow worse than the Z30. This is a bit of a caveat because I'm just talking about the digital internal stabilization. You get extra stabilization modes when you use certain Nikon compatible lenses, but I like to use third-party lenses, so I'm just talking about the digital stabilization. I don't know how this happened, but on these two cameras with the same exact sensor, the one with the older processor has better internal digital stabilization. On the Z50 Mark II, it's basically unusable. On the Z30, it doesn't really fix much, but it also doesn't really hurt much, if that makes sense. So if we had log, this would have been a really cool option to shoot really affordable log footage, but I digress. And this is just frustrating as well because this camera and these vlogger cameras are supposed to be kind of a replacement or a competitor to your iPhone. But even the modern iPhone 15 and 16s have the ability to shoot in Apple Log, or you can use something like the Blackmagic camera app and get pretty amazing video out of a device you probably already have. So if you're looking for something just to do vlogs or like video footage and you don't want to spend extra money, if you already have an iPhone 15 or 16 Pro, I'd probably just use that. But if you do want a camera that can do photography and video, I'll show you how you can make your video images look a bit better out of the Z30. The first step is to choose a color profile that you think looks good straight out of camera, but you definitely need to make some tweaks to make the image look more professional and just more pleasing. The first thing to do is to go to your adjustments in your picture profile and lower that sharpness and lower the clarity by a little bit, and you're gonna see better results right away. Look at my facial hair in this shot straight out of camera, default picture profile. My beard hair looks pretty jarring and nasty and over sharpened. Now look when I have the sharpness and clarity turned down just a little bit, it looks much more smooth, much more natural. Even the pores on my skin look less aggressive, which is always a plus for me. I don't want you guys looking at all my pores, okay? And another fun thing I like to do is just reduce my contrast in camera. You can always add more contrast back in post, but the thought is with these cheaper cameras that don't shoot in log, reducing contrast might give you a smidge more detail in your shadows and your highlights. After you make those adjustments, the footage on this camera looks pretty good. I would not say it's amazing. The camera is so dang lightweight, similar to what I said about the Z52, where the footage just looks pretty shaky. So the wider lenses you use, the more stable your footage is gonna look. And also those wider lenses will help with the appearance of rolling shutter. The longer the lens you use, the more exaggerated rolling shutter looks. Now the autofocus in video, for Nikon in general, I just don't love it. I think they're still playing catch up. Yes, they've made pretty great strides and they've gotten much better in recent time, but I still think they can make some improvements to match up with Canon, Sony, and Lumix. Honestly, look at this. Look at my Lumix. Look at my S9 go on a third-party Sigma. I mean, overall thoughts. Does this camera hold up to what Nikon claims it does? I mean, yeah, but honestly, the Z30 image quality-wise, I think is better at photography than video. The biggest downside of that is the fact that it does not have an electronic viewfinder, which just leaves me kind of confused about this camera and even more frustrated about this dumb trend. I mean, I'm a hypocrite. I have the S9 and the FX30, both of which do not have EVF. So I guess I'm a part of the problem. I'm supporting it. The big decision to make is if you really want to get into the Nikon system. Now, if you already have a more expensive Nikon camera as your main shooter, like the Z8 or the Z6 III, Z9, whatever, then maybe adding a little camera like this to your kit just for fun is not a bad decision, because you can use your full frame lenses on this camera if you wanna. But if you're gonna invest in your first real mirrorless camera, which is probably most of you watching this video, why would you go with the Nikon over the ZV-E10 from Sony or the Canon R100, which has a viewfinder, and both of these other options are cheaper? Make sure you watch some other videos on the R100, the ZV-E10. Also, Fuji has some affordable APS-C camera options as well. I know I started this video by saying it's overwhelming. That's because it is. There's a lot of options out there. Sign up for my Patreon to get your name plastered on the end of my videos like these incredibly handsome people on the side of the screen. You'll get access to all the digital assets I've ever made and ever will make, and automatic entry into monthly gear giveaways. Text me when you get home so I know you're safe. Watch out for deer. They are violent creatures. Follow me on Instagram for short and dumb stuff. Join the Discord for some nerdy camera and tech friends. Remember, you are absolutely loved, much more than you may even know. And God bless you guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.